Good day everyone. In this video, I'm going to present to you the basic fingerprint patterns. So as we all know, it is composed of three patterns. First is the loop, followed by the whirls, and lastly is the arches. Okay, to start with, we have here the so-called loop patterns. So it is composed, or within the global population, it is composed of 60%, or almost 60% of the population composes or possessing a loop patterns of their fingerprint. Okay, and we have here what are the characteristics of a loop pattern. Okay, so it says in here that a pattern in which one or more ridge. Okay, take note of that. So it should be or it contains one or more of the ridges. Okay, start at one side, okay, of the pattern, run towards the upper corner of the opposite side, okay, then turn around or recurve and start back toward the side from which they came originally, forming a loop with a core and delta at the edge of the pattern area. Okay, so let's try to make use of this illustration to show what is a loop, or what composes, or what are the elements of a loop. Okay, so as we have said a while ago, it should be, okay, having a ridge, okay, that starts from one side. So let's take this as an example, this ridge. So it starts from one side and going upward, okay, upward, and with that it starts, or there is a part wherein it starts to turn back, okay, curve and turning back to the point where facing, or point on the, or going back, okay, towards the side from which it originally starts. Okay, so that is the first element that we have seen in here. Okay, and that is not only the characteristics of a loop. So it should have also, okay, a core and a delta. So as we have discussed the last on our last videos, we have discussed on how to locate the core and the delta of the fingerprint pattern. So we have here the delta. Okay, so we have here the point of divergence. So as we can see in here, okay, it is the one that, or this ridge, okay, a short ridge. Okay, this is considered to be our delta, since it is the one that is nearest to the point of divergence. So with that, this is our delta, and we have here also the core. So as you can see here, it is like a rod, and then on the core location rule, so as we have said, okay, since it touches the shoulders, or it reaches as high as the shoulders of the loop, then we can use this rod as the core, okay, of our pattern. Alright, so with that, it is, or those are the three basic elements of loop. So moving on, let's try to have here the two divisions of loop for a while. Okay, so let's try to have here this illustration first before we have the two divisions. So let's try to have here the X-ray, okay, image of our hands. So let's say this is our, or we should not say, okay, because it's really the left hand. Okay, so this is our left hand, okay, and this is our right hand. Okay, so with that, it is facing downward. Okay, it's facing downward. So we are not facing our hands, but the hands are facing downward. Okay, so with that, we have here our thumb. Okay, this is our thumb, and of course we have here the little finger. So let's try to familiarize, let's try to use those as our keys in here. So we have here the little finger of our left hand. Okay, and with that, it's very important also to know, okay, these two types of bones that we have here in our hand. So we have here the radial. Okay, take note that the radial bone is aligned with the thumb. Okay, it is the one that is aligned with the thumb. So same as to the right hand. So we have here the radial bone. So this is our thumb, and it is aligned with our thumb. Okay, the radial bone. So with that, on the other hand, we have here another smaller bones that is forming, or that we have in our hands. Okay, so This one is called as the ulnar bone or ulna. Okay, and take note for you not to be confused. Just keep in mind that this is aligned with our little finger. Okay, so this is our ulnar bone, and on the other side, this is the ulnar bone for our right hand. Okay, so wag po tayong malilito. Wag po tayong malilito dito because it's very important for us, especially in determining if what type of loop is the pattern. So is it a radial loop or it's a ulnar loop? Okay, so again, for you not to be confused, so long as you can use the thumb as the key. Okay, so in our left hand, okay, in our left hand, okay, so it is aligned with this part. Okay, so we can call that as the radial bone, and then this part is the ulnar bone. Also, it is aligned with the little finger. Okay, and moving on, we have here now the radial loop that I've been saying a while ago. So let's try to have here what is radial loop. Okay, so it says here that a loop is radial when the opening end, okay, take note, when the opening end of the loop ridge points in the direction of the thumb side of either the left or right hand. That's why I introduced to you a while ago, okay, those basic parts of our hands, or especially the bones, because those are the ones that we can use in order for us to determine if this is a radial loop or ulnar loop. Okay, so let's say in this illustration, this is taken, or this fingerprint was taken from our left hand. Okay, from the left hand. Take note, it's from the left hand. Right, so with that, for us to say that it is a radial loop, it must open, the loop must, okay, facing, or the opening of the loop should facing the thumb, okay, the direction of the thumb. So in our left hand, okay, in our left hand, if it is facing towards the direction of our hand, the thumb, then it is facing the, and we say that the thumb is aligned with the radial bone. Okay, so with that we can say that that is a radial loop pattern. Okay, so let's go back here in this illustration, and let's say again this is our left hand. Okay, this is our left hand here, and with that, as mentioned in the illustration, let's say the fingerprint that was in the illustration, or this illustration, or this fingerprint was taken is in this ring finger. Okay, so let's say it was taken in our in our ring finger. Okay, so that is the pattern. This is the pattern. Okay, so with that, in this illustration, the question is it a radial loop or it's an ulnar loop? Okay, take note, for us to say that it is a radial loop, it must be facing, okay, or the opening. So saan ba yung opening ng ating loop? Okay, opening ng loop natin. So yung opening niya is dito nakaharap, di ba? So saan siya nakaharap? So it's facing the direction of our thumb. Okay, or it is facing towards our thumb. Okay, and again, the thumb is aligned with the radial bone, and that is why it is called as a radial loop, or we say that it is a radial loop. Okay, so paano naman? Baliktarin natin. So ilagay naman kaya natin sa right hand po itong ating pattern. Okay, so same, nakuha natin yung fingerprint pattern na ito sa kaliwang kamay, sa ring finger ng ating subject. Okay, so ganun pa din. Ilagay natin to, same opening. Okay, so parang yung nagamit lang natin na illustration sa kabilang kamay. Okay, so ang mangyayari dyan ay parang ganito. Okay, so sabihin natin nakuha yan sa ring finger ng ating right hand. Take note. Okay, so saan ngayon nakapoint yung direction ng opening, or saang direction nakapoint ang opening ng ating loop? Okay, so nakapoint na siya ngayon sa little finger natin, di ba? So with that, ano ang magiging classification na ng loop na ito? Okay, So ang magiging classification na niya ay hindi na radial loop kundi magiging ulnar loop na siya. Okay, take note of that. So we have here the ulnar bone, and it is aligned with the little finger, so with that it become a radial. I mean, it becomes already a ulnar loop. Okay, so take note, in ulnar loop, it is when the opening of the loop, or it says in here that the opening end of the loop ridge points into the direction towards the little finger of either right hand or left hand. Okay, so eto, sabihin naman natin, okay, baliktarin natin. Okay, nakakuha tayo ng fingerprint dito sa thumb part, or let's say dito sa point finger. Okay, nakakuha tayo ng fingerprint pattern na ang direction niya is nakapoint naman sa thumb natin. So anong fingerprint pattern na ito? So we can say that it is already a radial loop. Okay? So magiging radial loop na siya kasi nakapoint na towards, or yung opening it points towards the right thumb. Okay? I mean the thumb. So with that, this is now considered to be as a radial loop. So same goes with the other hand. Okay, so sabihin natin sa point finger, ganun din yung opening, naka-point pa rin, ganun pa rin yung illustration natin. Okay, so the same, okay, point of direction. So saan siya ngayon naka-point? So hindi na sa thumb, naka-point na siya sa little finger. So with that, magiging ulnar loop na siya. So it's very important also for you to know which hand, or to indicate which hand does that loop pattern was taken. Okay, so with that, that is the two divisions of loop pattern. Okay, and now we have here the requisites of a loop. So we are going to have it one by one. Okay, although we have mentioned it a while ago already. So let's try to have here one by one. So as mentioned, it should have a delta. Okay, so we can say it is not, we can't say that it is a delta, it's a loop pattern if it doesn't have a delta. So it should have a delta. So just like in this illustration we have here, okay, we have here still a loop pattern because, okay, we have here the, let's try to locate the delta in here. So we have here the diverging ridges. Okay, so let's find the point of divergence. So as you can see, sabi nga natin, in locating also the type lines, it should be the innermost ridge. Okay, so we have here the point of, the diverging ridge and diverging ridges, and we have here, or we were able to point the location of the point of divergence. Okay, we were able to locate the point of divergence. So as we have said, okay, so it's an abrupt, it is considered to be as a short ridge with a and it is also, we can say that it is an abrupt ridge ending, so we can use this as the delta. Okay, so the delta is in this part. Alright, so it is considered, or one requisite of the loop has, or we have already one requisite of the loop. Another one, it should have also a core. Okay, so in this pattern, where is the core? In this illustration, so it's, we have here a rod, and take note, it rises, or it is or it rises as high as the shoulders. That's why we can say that this is, or we can consider this our core of the pattern. Okay, so aside from that, it should have also a recurving ridge that passes between the delta and the core. Okay, so in loop, in loop patterns, we have the so-called ridge counting later on. Okay, so we are going to have that on our next slides. So again, we have said a while ago that our delta is located in here. Okay, this is delta, symbolized by letter D, and we have here the core. And again, to apply, okay, rule not the rule, just to show this requisite of a loop. So it says in here that it must have a recurving ridge passes between the core and delta. Okay, so let's make an imaginary line in here. Okay, So, gawa tayo ng imaginary line and then let's try to find if there's a recurving ridge. Sabi natin, recurving ridge, it should have, okay, a recurving ridge. So it starts from one side and it goes back towards the uh, side wherein wherein it originally starts. Okay, so we have here isa, bilangin natin. Okay, so meron ba? So isa na yan. Meron pa bang recurving ridge dito? So meron din. Okay, so dalawa na. Ilan pa? Tatlo, apat, lima, anim, pito. Okay, so walo, siyam, sampo, and almost lagpas na ng sampo. Okay, so at least it must have a recurving ridge. So pwedeng isa, or pwedeng dalawa, pwedeng tatlo, and so on. Okay, so we can say now that it is a loop because it has a recurving ridge that passes between the core and the delta. Okay, moving on here in letter D, it says here that it must have a ridge count of at least 1. Okay, so we have here in this the same illustration. So the ridge count, nabilang natin ilan yung ridges na nabilang natin kanina. Okay, so meron din tayong rulings kung paano mag-ridge count and I'll be showing you later on yung mga technicalities niya. So as of now, okay, sabi dyan, ridge count, okay, bibilangin natin yung ridges that passes from the delta and of course, or in between the delta and the core. Okay, so as we have said a while ago, meron tayong siyam or lagpas 10 or almost 10, almost 12, okay, ridges passes, okay, in between the core and the delta. Okay, but for us to say that it is a loop, there should be at least 1. Okay, pero kung wala man lang ridge count, okay, wala man lang isa, nag-draw tayo ng imaginary line from the delta and the core, or in between the delta and the core, and then walang nasagi man lang yung imaginary line, okay, then there's no ridge count, then we can say that that is a loop. So it might be just a tented arch. Okay, so that is the requisite of the loop. Okay, so if all of those requisites, or if all of those elements are shown, okay, in the fingerprint, or we were able to find out in the pattern, okay, then we can say that that pattern is a loop. Okay, so now we have here ridge counting. So as I've said a while ago, ridge counting, okay, the process of counting the ridges, okay, touch or crossed the imaginary line drawn from the delta towards the core, katulad ng ginawa natin kanina. Okay, nagdrawing tayo ng imaginary line and then we counted how many ridges touches the imaginary line. Okay, so a white space must always intervene between the delta and the fingers, the first ridge to be counted. Okay, so that's why there are rulings, or there are some guidelines on what we are going to include in ridge counting. Okay, so let's try to have here this illustration. So the core and delta is already given in this illustration, so what we are going to do is just to ridge count. So first, sabi dyan, locate the exact points of the core and the delta, and we are lucky that the core and delta is already provided in our illustration. So now we have here, let's try to count all the ridges that touches or cross the imaginary line drawn between the core and the delta. So wala tayong imaginary line dito na naka-provide, so let's try to draw an imaginary line on our own. So let's try to have here color. Okay, it's better to use red. Okay, so let's draw imaginary line from the core to the delta. Okay, so make sure that it is aligned. So hindi siya naka-align doon kanina, so ulitin natin yung imaginary line. So it should be pointing towards or within the direction also of the delta. Okay, so now we can perform already rule number 2. So let us try to count. Okay, But before we are going to count, let's try to keep in mind that it says here in rule number 3, incipient ridge is never counted. Okay, take note of that. Not matter where they appear. So it doesn't matter, or it even though that it is or it crosses the imaginary line. So as we have said, incipient ridges are ridges that are having, or they don't have the same sizes as the ridges or the surrounding ridge. Okay, yung mas manipis yung itsura. Okay, so those are incipient ridges. So if you remember on our previous video recording, we have also tackled that incipient ridge. So these are ridges that have a lighter, okay, or thinner size than the surrounding ridges. Okay, kung sasabihin pa natin, or kung i-define natin in our own term, okay, masasabi na parang abnormal. Okay, it has an abnormal size ridge. So with that, they are not included in ridge counting. Okay, wag nyong isama sa ridge counting natin. But in our illustration, wala naman tayong nakikitang incipient ridges dito kasi pare-parehas naman ng thickness. Okay, and also never include the core and the delta in the count. Okay, so wag nating isasama yung core and delta sa ridge counting. Yung nasa gitna lang yung ika-count natin. Okay, so let's try to apply now the counting. So we are going to start from the core. So does it passes these? Okay, does it passes the this ridge? Okay, so kung mapapansin nyo, okay, it passes the point of convergence. It is a converging ridge. Okay, and it is, or yung nasagi ng ating imaginary line, nasagi niya yung point of convergence, diba? Kung saan nag-meet yung two ridges. So ilang count nun? Ilan yung counting nun? Okay, isa ba ang counting nun or dalawa? Okay, so we have here the rule in this part. Okay, so I'll be showing you later on kung anong rule yon. Okay, but in this case, it should be 2. Okay, so the ruling there is there should be, or it should be counted as 2. Okay, yung meeting point ng converging ridge. So bale ang ridge count na to is 2. Okay, and then it passes again another ridge, pero hindi naman point of convergence. So we are going to have here only one count. Okay, so 2, 3, and again it is, or it passes again another point of convergence. So with that, it has 2 counts. So ang bilang na natin 5. Okay, and then as we continue, it passes again another ridge. So 5, 6, okay, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, okay, and 12. Alright, so there are 12. Okay, there are 12 ridge counts. Okay, so 12 po yung nasa in between, or there are 12 ridge counts in between the core and the delta. So that is how we going to do ridge counting. Okay, and let's try to further familiarize the other rules, or what are the what should be. Okay, what are the other rules, or what are the other guidelines in ridge counting. Okay, but to show again incipient ridge pala, okay, sabihin natin meron tayong thicker. Okay, merong thick line na nabuo, thinner line, okay, or thinner ridge. So meron tayong nasagi niya. So anong gagawin natin? But in our illustration, it is not thicker, but the yellow line, okay, or yellow ridge, that is symbolizing a thinner ridge than the other, or the surrounding ridges. So it touches the imaginary line. So again, general rule, or in the rule, we are not going to count that, or we are not going to count incipient ridges. Okay, so with that, we are going to have here now the other, or what are the ridges. Okay, what ridges are included in ridge counting. So it's an additional to the rulings on ridge counting. Okay, so it says in here, okay, that those included in ridge counting could be a ridge island, okay, or if not, a dot. So we have here already these ridge characteristics topic in our previous recordings. Okay, or a short ridge, a long ridge, okay, or an abrupt ending. Okay, so sudden abrupt ending, or an abrupt ending ridge. So biglang nahinto na ridge. Okay, so parang yun yung mga yun yung mga isasama natin sa counting ng ridges. Okay? So take note, ang ridge counting pala ginagawa lang natin 'yan sa loop patterns. Okay? We don't do ridge counting sa whirl. Okay? So we are just using this, or we are just doing ridge counting especially on loop patterns. So moving on, we have here we have here also the rule in bifurcating ridge, or in counting with regards to bifurcating ridges. Okay, so let's say we have here an illustration. Okay, so let's create a loop pattern in here. Gawa ulit tayo ng sarili nating illustration. Okay, simple illustration. Okay. Oh. Okay, so medyo hindi maganda yung drawing natin. So gawa ulit tayo ng mas maganda. Okay, so let's say we have here the delta. Okay, and then let's say, okay, so let's say this is our delta, okay, and this is our core. Okay, that is our core. So with that, sabi dyan, if a ridge bifurcates or branches into 2 across the imaginary line, then the count is given 2. Okay, so sabihin natin, okay, gawa ulit tayo ng imaginary line dito from the core and the delta. Okay, so dito pala tayo bubuo. Okay, so starting from here, going down to the delta. Okay, so with that, we were able to create an imaginary line. Okay, and then sabihin natin, meron tayong sa imaginary line na ito, merong naka-cross na bifurcating ridge. Okay, try bifurcation, and then meron pa rin dito. Okay, sabihin natin ganito ang nangyari. Okay, and then meron din dito. Sabihin natin sa taas meron din. Okay, pero iba na yung itsura. So okay, so tingnan natin yung pagkakaiba nitong tatlo na ito. Sabihin natin ganito. Okay, so again, sabi dyan sa rule 1, okay, if the ridge bifurcates or branches into 2 across the imaginary line, then the count is given 2. Okay, so across or nakuha, okay, or yung sa bifurcation, okay, both of the branches, okay, both of the bifurcations, bifurcating ridge, or the branches, or its branches are crossed by the imaginary line, then they are counted as 2. So hindi sila may ka-count as 1. So katulad na lang ng illustration na ito. Okay, katulad na lang dito. So hindi siya, I mean both branches, okay, na cross ng imaginary line natin. So bibilangan natin sila tig-isa. So it is a total, or it has a total of 2 ridge count. Okay? And then paano naman kapag the imaginary line cross only the bifurcation, okay, directly at the point of forking, it is counted as 2. Okay, so paano naman kapag sa eksaktong point of bifurcation? Okay, katulad ng sinasabi ko dito. Okay, so let's say this is the point of bifurcation, or dito mismo yung naghiwalay sila. Okay, naghiwalay mismo sila dito banda. Okay, so yun yung na-cross ng imaginary line natin. Okay, so yan ay counted as 2. Katulad nung sinabi ko kanina sa point of convergence. Okay, so point of convergence, or kung saan nag-meet yung 2 ridges. Okay, so let's say kanina okay, nag-meet sila dito and then na-cross ito ng imaginary line, then that is considered to be as 2 counts. Okay, and then same as with the bifurcating ridge also. And sabi naman dito sa rule, paragraph 3 ng letter E, if the imaginary line does not cross the point, okay, of forking or falls short of touching it, okay, forking or falls short of touching it, it crosses only one ridge. The ridge count is given only 1. Okay, so paano naman kapag it only touches single? Okay, so dito hindi niya na-touch yung isang branch, diba? Ito lang yung na-touch niya na branch. Okay, so with that, ang count nun is hindi dalawa but it is only given as 1 count. Okay, so that is how are we going to count ridges, or that is how are we going to count bifurcating ridges. So take note, kapag sa point of bifurcation siya na-cross, okay, sa point of bifurcation mismo, then that is counted as 2. Okay, and then kapag nasagi na ng imaginary line both of the branches, then that is counted as 2. Pag isa lang yung na-cross, then that is only counted as 1. Okay, so keep those in mind. Okay, so again, without to further elaborate, okay, so again, we have here a bifurcation or bifurcating ridge. So pag ito na-cross ng imaginary line, okay, parehas tigi isang ridge count yan. Okay, total of 2. Okay, kapag isa lang yung kapag isa lang yung nasagi, ito lang yung nasagi, okay, ng imaginary line natin, ito lang na part, then that is only 1 count. Kapag sa gitna mismo, that is 2 count. Okay, I hope that that is clear. Now, we have here rule number F, or we have here letter F. Okay, so it says here in ridge, the ridge enclosure are counted as 2 also. Okay, so again, kapag sinabing ridge enclosure yan, na sabi natin in our discussion with regards to the ridge characteristics, ang itsura po ay ganito, di ba? So there is a single ridge, it bifurcates, and there are at a certain point they meet again. Okay, they form a point of convergence. Then again, they were able to create already a ridge enclosure, okay, or an eyelet that we have saying as we have said the last time. Okay, so anong counting yan? Paano i-count? Okay, so the counting is, okay, kapag nasagi yan, then that is considered as 2 counts. Okay, pag point of the point naman yung nasagi, then still, that could be counted as 2 again. Okay, so same as the bifurcating ridges and converging ridges. Okay, and then crisscrossing or meeting of 2 ridges is counted, as we have said, meeting, okay, or crisscrossing, that is counted as 2 ridges. Okay, so that is letter G, and overall those are the rules that you should keep in mind, especially in ridge counting. Okay, so moving on with the next basic pattern that we have in our fingerprint. Okay, so it composes, okay, global population, almost 35% of our population, or the global population, ang percentage po niyan, it composes 35%, or almost on the global population. Okay, people possess or 35% of the population possess a whirl pattern. Okay, so that is let's try to have here more on what is all about loop, whirl pattern. Okay, so we have here the first kind, kasi there are several kinds of whirl that we have. So let's try to have here first the plain whirl. So paano natin masasabi na ito ay it is just a plain whirl? Okay, so sabi dyan, it is a fingerprint pattern consisting of 2 deltas. Okay, so unlike kanina, isa lang na delta and isang core lang ang ating loop, but in whirl there should be, or there is there are 2 deltas, especially in plain whirl. Okay, and which at least one ridge makes a turn through one complete circuit. Okay, so kung kanina sa plain sa loop, okay, at least one or single recurving ridge. Dito naman, circuiting ridge or forming a circular shape uh, pattern, okay, or circular movement of the line. Okay, pero dito it was said that it should have a complete circuit. Okay, so the pattern could be a spiral, so it doesn't necessarily that it should be spiral kasi pwede namang maging oval yung pattern natin, okay, or yung looks niya, and then it could be circular or any variant of a circle. Okay, so long as it complies, okay, excuse me, and so long as it complies with the requisites, okay, that we are going to have in here to say it is a plane whirl. Okay, so let's try to have here elements of the plane whirl. So let's try to have here one by one. So it has a complete circuit. So makikita nyo ba dito, or meron ba kayong makikita dito a ridge that forming a complete circuit or isang ikot or buong ikot? Okay, so as we have seen, there are lots of ridges forming a complete circuit. Okay, so with that, at least, okay, yan, so it has lots of circuiting ridges. Okay, and second one, okay, it says here it should have two deltas, nabanggit natin kanina. So it has a right delta, a left delta, and there should be also a right a right delta. Okay, and letter C, it says here that at least one circuiting ridge, okay, is touched or crossed by an imaginary line traversing between the two deltas. Okay, sabi dyan, at least isang circuiting ridge. So we have here one circuiting ridge out, or this is the outermost circuiting ridge. We can say that this is the outermost circuiting ridge. Okay, and then sabi dyan, at least isang circuiting ridge ay it should touch the imaginary line. So nandito yung left delta natin, and then nandito naman yung right delta natin. So with that, we can say that it is, or that is the time we can say that that is a plane whirl. Okay, take note of the elements. So kung wala yung isang element dyan, then it is considered to be, or it is not considered as a plane whirl. So just like in fire, okay, kapag walang isang just like in the fire triangle or the element of fire, so if we don't have one element, okay, to create fire, then we cannot produce a fire. Okay, so tanggalin mo yung heat, so paano ka makakabuo ng apoy? So same as with the fingerprint patterns. So now we have here the central packet loop whirl. So paano naman ang usapan dito? Paano naman kapag hindi sumagi or wala man lang ridge, okay, forming a complete circuit that cross the imaginary lines that we draw from the right delta or that we draw from the left delta going to the right delta. Okay, so that's the time we have here now this so-called central packet loop whirl. Okay, take note that central packet loop whirl are considered to be as composite pattern or transitional pattern. Okay, so bakit nasabi na composite pattern yan? Because it is made up of pattern inside one, or yung pattern nabuo mismo dun sa loob ng isang pattern. Okay, and it is also said as transitional pattern because it is composed of two patterns, hindi lang iisang patterns. Okay, so composite kasi it is formed inside, okay, nabuo sa loob ng isang pattern. And then transitional, nasabi na transitional ang central packet loop whirl kasi it is composed of two patterns. Okay, so meron tayo dito central packet loop whirl, it is a pattern containing a loop and then of course a whirl pattern. Okay, so sabi dito the elements of a central packet loop whirl. So at least one recurving ridge or obstruction ridge at right angle. Okay, so there is we have here, okay, we have here a so this illustration is not, okay, yeah, so it is a typographical error. So let us just try to remove in here this illustration. So it's not a typographical error. Okay, so let's try to fix it. Okay, so we have here the illustration. So I've said a while ago that if it crosses, okay, if it crosses yung ating one circuiting ridge crosses the imaginary line, that is a plane whirl. So this is not a plane whirl, or this illustration is not a plane whirl. So it is just anong tawag natin dyan? So it is not a plane whirl, but this time it is this is okay, this is not a plane whirl, but it should be like this. Okay, so ganito dapat po yung ating sasabihin na para masabi natin na central packet loop whirl. Okay, bakit natin nasabi na central packet loop whirl? Okay, so ngayon, okay, sa characteristics naman, the first element, okay, kinakailangan, meron siya. Okay, it possesses, okay, as one recurving ridge. Okay, one recurving ridge, kaya nga nasabi natin na central packet loop whirl yan kasi merong loop or merong recurving ridges. So, merong recurving ridge dyan sa gilid na ng whirl pattern. Okay, so with that, it should have two deltas. Okay, merong dalawang delta. So it has a right delta. Okay, so we have here the right delta, and then we have here also the we have here the left delta. Okay, if we are facing our if we are facing our computer or our phone. Okay, and then we have here the right delta. Okay, so with that, as we say here in letter C, no recurving ridge within the pattern area is touched or crossed by an imaginary line. Okay, so there should be, or there should not be, or wala dapat. Okay, wala dapat recurving ridge. Okay, ang sumasagi sa ating nagawang imaginary line. Okay, so as we have seen in our illustration, walang nag-touch or walang recurving ridge. Okay, so we have here the recurving ridge, but as we draw here an imaginary line, wala man lang nasagi na recurving ridge. Okay, so with that we can say, or wala man lang nasabing na touch na circuiting ridge. So with that we can say that it is a central packet loop whirl. Okay, so that is the elements, or those are the elements of a central packet loop whirl. Okay, moving on the next type of whirl. So meron tayo yung tinatawag naman na double loop whirl. Okay, so still this is considered to be as a composite pattern. Okay, so it is like the central packet loop whirl. Okay, ito ang double loop whirl, sabi dyan, it is a two separate and distinct loop formation. So as we have here our illustration, mapapansin ninyo there we can say loop formations here, two loop formations that are interlocking. Okay, but with that, one of the loops surround or overlaps the other. Okay, that could be surrounding, kaya nasabi na composite pattern yan kasi it is surrounded by a, or it is formed inside a certain, or inside another pattern. Okay, kaya nasabing composite pattern siya. So with that, okay, let's try to have here one by one the another characteristics of a double loop whirl. Okay, so the two loops in a double loop whirl need not comply, okay, with all the requirements of a loop, okay, pattern, and that no ridge count is necessary for both loops in the formation. So disregarded po ang ridge counting sa double loop whirl. Okay, so we don't need to count. Okay, so hindi naman loop to, hindi naman loop yung bumubuo ng double loop whirl. Okay, so with that, we don't need to perform ridge counting in here. Okay, the two loops do not have the same length or not the same size, so it doesn't need necessary na kailangang parehas na sizes. It could be the other loop is smaller, okay, or the other loop is larger. Okay, all that is required is that there be two separate, okay, two separate and distinct loop or loop formations. Okay, two sets of shoulders and two deltas. Okay, so as we have said, as we have seen in here, so we have here or these are having shoulders. Okay, these recurving ridges have shoulders, or we can locate the shoulders in here, and this pattern has two deltas. Okay, then that's the time we can say, or still we can say that that is a double loop whirl, even though that even though that there is a ridge, I mean there's no ridge that was touched on the imaginary line. If we draw an imaginary line from the delta and the core, okay, sabi nga natin disregarded ang ridge counting dito. Okay, so this is the, or that those are the characteristics of a double loop whirl, or basic characteristics of double loop whirl. And now we have here elements of the double loop whirl. Let's try to have here one by one again. So there should be two separate loop formations, okay, and two separate and distinct set of shoulders, or these are the most important. Okay, the shoulders, or they have two sets of distinct shoulders, and it should have two deltas for us to say that that is a double loop whirl. Okay, and we have here accidental whirl. So sabihin natin naging tatlo or tatlo yung delta niya. Okay, that is not considered as a double loop whirl, but maybe we can say that already as a, or as an accidental whirl. Okay, so a fingerprint pattern, that is combination of two or more different types of pattern. Okay, meron lang isang exception. Take note that in accidental whirl, wala po tayong plain arch, or hindi kino-combine ang plain arch. Okay, so it's either a combination of whirl and a loop, okay, or tented arch, okay, except plain arch only. Okay, so combination of a loop or a whirl, a loop and a central pocket loop whirl, and any combination of two different loops and whirl patterns except plain arch, then those are considered as accidental whirl. Okay, and some authors, they call this pattern as an accidental whirl composites. Okay, so as you can see in here, bakit ito nasabi, or yung illustration natin, bakit natin nasabi na ito ay accidental whirl? Okay, makikita nyo, it is combination of a whirl and it might be a loop. Okay, or if not, this is not considered to be as loop, then it might be a tented arch. Okay, but looking at it, we can say that it is a loop formation. Okay, so with that, bakit nasabi din na yan, ito ay accidental whirl. Okay, so let's try to have here one by one the elements for us to have the for us to confirm if that is really an accidental whirl yung illustration na nakuha natin. So as we have said a while ago, combination of two different types of patterns except plain arch, okay, and then two or more deltas. Okay, so this is just the basic elements of the accidental whirl. So two or more deltas. So focus tayo sa delta, counts ng delta. So makikita nyo dito ilan ba ang deltas ng ating pattern here. Okay, so as you can see, or if you might try to look deeper, then you were able to find out that it has 3 deltas. Okay, so we have here the first, or the outer I mean on the left side, we have here the first delta. Okay, so where is the point of divergence in here? Okay, so we have here the point of divergence. Okay, and then we can say that this is our delta. Okay, the bifurcation in here. So with that, we can say that this is the left delta. Okay, or first delta. Okay, or we can just say left delta, and then we have here on this part, you can say that, or you can find here another delta. So this could be the delta of this pattern. Okay, and then we can say, or we can just label it as the middle delta, and then on the rightmost part we can see again another delta in here. Okay, so we have here the point of divergence. Okay, and we can say that the delta is in here, so with that, that is the right delta. Okay, so there are 3 deltas. Okay, kasi sabi dito sa elements, there are 2 or more possible deltas. Okay, so that is for accidental whirl. Okay, and then now we have here the ridge tracing. So kung sa ating discussion kanina, sa loop pattern, meron tayong tinatawag na ridge counting. Ngayon naman sa ating whirl patterns, meron tayo yung tinatawag din natin na ridge tracing naman yung ginagawa natin dito. Okay? So take note, for loop, ridge counting ang gagawin natin. Okay? Sa whirl, ang ginagawa natin is ridge tracing. So ano ba, bakit natin ginagawa itong ridge tracing? So in order for us to find out if the whirl is considered to be as inner whirl or meeting whirl ba yan or outer whirl ba yan? Okay, so we have here the three subdivisions. So in order for us to know what subdivisions or what type of plane whirl is that, then we need to perform ridge tracing. Okay, and these three are symbolized by IMO. Okay, I stands for inner, okay, M stands for meeting, and O stands for outer. Okay, so let's try to have here the basic rules for tracing whirls. Okay, so the first one, it says here that tracing always begin at the left delta and goes toward the right delta. Okay, so let's make a plane whirl in here. So let's draw an illustration, a simple illustration of a whirl. Okay, so let's say, all right, so we have here so let's say we have here a bifurcation. Okay, and then we have here, okay, so we have here, so this pattern, let's say this is a plane whirl. Okay, a basic plane whirl. Okay, so let's try to locate. Okay, that's why it's very important on how we are going to locate the core and the delta. Okay, also, so as to the rule, okay, paano ba natin mahanap yung delta? So we are going to look on the, or we can find the divergence. Okay, diverging ridges or the type lines. Okay, so as we can see, this is the innermost ridge that covers the pattern area or covers the covers the pattern. Okay, so with that we can say that this is the type lines and these are the diverging ridges. So we have here the point of divergence. So we can say that this is, or we can choose this bifurcation as our delta. Okay, so this is our delta, right delta, left delta. Okay, para hindi tayo malito. So looking at our computer or our on our phone, nasa kaliwa po siya. Okay, so unless it was taken from the right hand, okay, baka mag-iba na naman yung, or mag-iba yung positioning niya. So focus lang tayo muna sa okay, sa focus lang muna tayo on what we are seeing on our monitor. Okay, so with that, this is considered to be as a left delta, our left delta. And then we have here, since meron tayong dot dito, that could be a delta, so we can say that this is our right delta. So with that, two deltas and then one circuiting ridge, sabihin natin that this is a plane whirl. Okay, so let's say like, okay, so plane whirl yung pattern natin dito. So with that, sabi dyan, tracing always begin at the left delta. So always dito tayo sa left delta and going towards the right delta. Okay, so the left delta going towards the right delta. So paano tayo mag-start niya? Paano natin gagawin yun? Okay, so uninterrupted ridge can be traced from the left delta to the right delta. Okay, so let's start in here from the ridge, okay, from the bifurcating ridge. Okay, and then okay, so uninterrupted siya, so we can move on. Okay, so with that we can just continue until makuha natin or marating natin yung part kung saan it is facing. Okay, it is facing already the right delta. Okay, so narating na natin. Okay, gamit tayo ng ibang kulay. Okay, so let's say here, let's start the counting in here. Okay, and then tuloy lang natin hanggang marating natin yung point kung saan, or the nearest point to the right delta. Okay, so dito tayo. And with that, that is our ridge tracing, or we were able to trace it from the left delta going to the right delta. Okay, so when tracing suddenly ends and the tracing is continued on, when the tracing suddenly ends, the tracing is continued on the ridge below it. Okay, so sabihin natin, okay, uninterrupted, tuloy-tuloy yan. Okay, paano naman kapag interrupted ridge siya? Okay, so tatanungin nyo si sir, bakit, anong gagawin natin pag ganun? So, ang isasagot ko sa inyo, nandyan na sa rule number 3. So, let's try to create here an illustration. Okay, sabihin natin, still parehas pa rin naman, this is our delta. Okay, yun nga lang ang nangyari, okay, interrupted. Okay, sabihin natin ganito yung illustration natin. Okay, right, so okay, so let's try to use this an illustration as our illustration for this example, to show example on rule number 3. Okay, so with that, again, this is our left delta, so let us start here our tracing. So with that, moving on there, okay, nag-stop siya. So kanina uninterrupted siya, kaya tuloy-tuloy yung tuloy-tuloy yung tracing natin. Pero ngayon, nag-stop siya. So anong gagawin natin? Mag-stop na rin ba tayo dyan? And then we are going to create an imaginary line already. Okay, so we are not going to end in that part. Okay, so we are going to, what are we going to do here? The tracing is continued below, continued on the ridge below it. Okay, so nasan ba yung ridge na nasa baba niya? So, dito tayo pupunta. Okay, so dyan tayo pupunta. Paano kapag sabihin natin, meron dyan. Okay, okay, so itutuloy ba natin na pupunta dito? Okay, so hindi po natin siya ipupunta doon. So we are going to continue below the ridge. Okay, the ridge below it. Okay, so with that, this time we are going to move on. Nag-stop siya ulit doon, so mag-start tayo dito, and then nag-stop na naman siya. So dito na tayo hanggang sa marating natin, okay, yung ating or nearest, okay, towards or nearest, or the point wherein it is nearest to the right delta. Okay, so with that, this is the that is where we are going to stop. Okay, so that is what we are going to do when the ridges are interrupted, okay, or the tracing suddenly ends. And now we have here rule number 4. Okay, so sabi dyan, a ridge must definitely end before the tracing may be continued on the ridge below it. Okay, so it should really ends. So dito tayo mag-stop. So hindi tayo pwedeng, okay, kapag tuloy-tuloy pa naman yung daloy niya, hindi tayo magpupunta sa ridge sa ridge na ito. Okay, ridge below it. Okay, so tuloy-tuloy pa rin yung pag-move, okay, until such time kung tuloy-tuloy naman siya, then we are not going to go down. Okay, so we just continue on the ridge below it kapag ito ay it really, or it should be, or definitely, or it must definitely end. Okay, para masabi natin na yan ay, or para masabi, or para gawin natin na ito ay tutuloy natin sa ridge na nasa baba niya. Okay, so when the ridge bifurcates, okay, the tracing is continued on the lower branch of the bifurcation. So sabihin natin nag-bifurcate siya. Okay, erase natin to. Okay, so sabihin natin itong ridge na ito, palitan natin yung kulay ulit. So balik tayo sa red. Okay, so sabihin natin okay, so sabihin natin ganito yung itsura. So, merong mga bifurcations na nabuo. Okay, so again, same pa rin lang naman yung gagawin natin. Mag-start tayo sa left delta and then moving towards the right delta. Okay, so with that, it ends here. So, punta tayo sa baba and then again, continue. And then ngayon, merong bifurcation. So, nalilito na tayo. Saan natin itutuloy yung tracing? Okay, so itutuloy natin yung tracing sa sabi dito sa rule number 5, it should be continued on the lower branch. Okay, so hindi sa upper branch. So we are going to continue on the lower branch. Okay, dito yung upper branch, nasa taas. So bababa tayo. Okay, so bababa tayo and then same pa rin, merong bifurcation na naman dito. Are we going to follow the upper branch? Still, the lower branch are going, we are going to still follow the lower branch until to the point wherein we are going to have the nearest or the tracing, or we were able to have the point wherein it is nearest facing to the facing our right delta. Okay, so with that, when the delta is the dot, that is for rule number 5. Okay, so paano naman kapag sabi dyan sa rule number 6, when the delta is a dot, okay, the tracing begins on the type lines which is the ridge immediately, okay, or below the delta. Okay, so which is the ridge immediately below the delta. Okay, so sabihin natin, okay, palitan natin yung illustration natin dito ulit. Okay, so sabihin natin yung sa left delta natin ang ridge characteristic ng delta natin ay dot. Okay, so it's a dot. So with that, ano kaya ang gagawin natin? Okay. Okay, so with that, meron tayo dito. Okay, so that yung delta natin sa left. Okay, so ano yung gagawin natin? Sabi dyan, the tracing begins on the type line. So hindi tayo magsisimula sa dot natin hindi sa dot tayo magsisimula, okay, ng ridge tracing natin. Okay, so saan tayo magsisimula? It says here that the tracing begins on our type lines. So saan ba yung type line natin? Okay, sabi natin, ang type line, it is the one that surrounds our pattern area. Okay, so as we have here, the type lines that we have, this is the innermost ridge that we have that surrounds the pattern area, then this is our type line. Okay, so saan tayo magsisimula? Syempre dito sa the type line, okay, baba ng delta. So take note, hindi sa taas ng delta, sa baba ng delta. Okay, so dito tayo magsisimula. Okay, let's try to use color blue in here to start our ridge tracing. So dito tayo magti-tracing. Okay, so tuloy-tuloy hanggang ma-reach natin, okay, yung point that it is already near facing the right delta. Okay, so that is how we are going to perform ridge tracing. Okay, so can you take note of those things? Okay, so with that, we have here, or we have here the rules on ridge tracing and how to begin and end. Let's try to have here one by one, but this is the procedure, okay, or the basic rules or general rules. So we have here some or additional rules or the specific rules when it comes to ridge tracing. So let's try to have here an illustration between, or illustration with regards to different types of whirls. Kasi sabi nga natin, napakaraming klase ng whirls. Okay, merong accidental, merong central pocket, merong plane whirl. Yung na-mention natin kanina, it's more on plane whirl. Okay, more on plane whirls rulings, okay, in ridge tracing. But here we have specific accidental whirl. Okay, so ridge tracing begins at the extreme left delta, stops at the point directly in front of the right delta. That is the basic or the one of the general rule when it comes to ridge tracing, di ba? So now we are going to have accidental whirl. Sabi nga natin, accidental whirl, it composes, or it could have, or it might have 2 or more deltas. Okay, so in an accidental whirl having 3 or more deltas, ang gagawin natin, the tracing begins at the extreme left delta, still general rule pa rin, okay, and goes towards the extreme right delta, and then we are going to ignore the other deltas. Okay, so let's try to have here, let's try to locate the left delta and the rightmost delta. Okay, so as we have here in our illustration, we can use this abrupt ending ridge as our delta in here. Okay, so this is our left delta. Then where is the rightmost part here? So we can say that this bifurcation as our right delta. Okay, and then we have here another where is the other deltas that we can see in here? Okay, so this could be, or this might be another delta that we have here. Okay, so we can say that it is a middle delta. Okay, so all in all, we can say that this accidental whirl possesses or having a 3 deltas. Okay, so as to the rule, parehas pa rin, we are going to start with the left delta, and then ang gagawin lang natin, i-disregard natin yung ibang deltas. Okay, so we are going to start here, going to the other parts. I mean, going to the rightmost part. Okay, and then with that, we are going to end, or we are going to, until the point wherein we are going to have here the point wherein it is near already with the right delta. So this is where we are going to have here the ridge counting. Okay, yes, this could be, or this is how we are going to trace the accidental whirl. Okay, and paano naman kapag double loop whirl siya? Okay, kapag double loop whirl naman siya, the tracing begins at the end. Okay, the tracing begins at the extreme left delta. Okay, the tracing begins at the extreme left delta. So when the tracing passes the right delta, one stop at the nearest point to the right delta on an upthrust. Okay, so if there's no upthrust is present, one continues the tracing until a point opposite to the right delta, or the right delta itself is reached. Okay, so let's try to have here, so let's say this is our delta, this bifurcation, our left delta, and take note, this is a double loop whirl. Okay, and then we have here the right delta, this bifurcation. Okay, so how are we going to do the tracing? So we are going to begin still on the rightmost delta. So let's try to have here, let's trace, and then okay, so until such time we are going to have here, okay, we are going to have here the upthrust, or we were able to reach the upthrust. Okay, so wag nating ituloy hanggang sa dulo, but we are going to stop wherein it is already near, okay, nearest point to the right delta. This is the nearest point to the right delta, di ba? Kasi, or this could be, okay, so again, let's try to have here. Okay, so we are going to have here the tracing until this point. So this is, or this could be the nearest point to the right delta. Okay, so wag nating ituloy sa taas kasi mapapalayo na siya sa delta. Okay, so if there's no upthrust, or wala man lang, or it doesn't go up, okay, paano kapag tuloy, excuse me, kapag tuloy-tuloy naman yung ridge natin dito, it surrounds the other loop. Okay, so anong gagawin? Dito natin itutuloy. Okay, so tuloy-tuloy lang siya until dito sa pinakamalapit sa right delta. Okay, but since in this pattern it has an upthrust, then we are going to follow rule number 3. Kapag wala, then we are going to follow rule number 4. Okay, so that is how are we going to perform this rule number 3 and rule number 4. Okay, so with that, that is the specific rules for double loop whirl and then accidental whirl. Okay, so what are the symbols, okay, for whirls as a result of ridge tracing? So bakit tayo ba nagre-ridge tracing? It's because we are going to identify nga kapag yan ay inner whirl, meeting whirl, or outer whirl. Okay, so paano natin masasabi na yan ay inner whirl? we have here the rule. Okay, so sabi dyan, when the ridge being traced from the left delta to the right delta passes inside or in front of the right delta, and there are 3 or more intervening ridges between the ridge traced, okay, the result of the tracing is inner, okay, and represented by letter I. Okay, so ano yung gagamitin natin na example dito? Okay, so gamitin natin dito as an example. Okay, so sabi natin kanina, okay, kapag inner, okay, dapat sa taas, okay, it should be, okay, in front, inside or in front of the right delta, inside or in front of the right delta. Okay, so in this situation, okay, let's try to use this an example. Okay, so dito tayo nag-end. Okay, this is the nearest point to the right delta. So dito tayo magbibilang, okay, ng intervening ridges. So bilang tayo dito, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so there are 4 intervening ridges between the right delta and then the point where we ended our ridge tracing. So with that, there are 4 intervening ridges. So let's label it as 4 intervening ridges. So ano yung position niya? Okay, so ano yung position nung, or saan nakalocate yung point na ito that is nearest to the delta? Okay, nasa harap ba ng right delta natin? Okay, nasa harap ba ng right delta natin? Okay, or nasa baba ng right delta natin? Okay, so if you look closer, okay, ang situation niya is nasa baba. Okay, di ba? Nasa baba, below ng right delta natin, nasa baba. Hindi siya nasa harap. Okay, kasi kung nasa harap siya, this is the front of the right delta. Ito yung harap niya. This is below. Okay, so with that, are we going to consider it as an inner whirl? Kasi sabi naman dyan, in front or right. Okay, so possible hindi siya inner whirl kasi it is located below the delta. Okay, so I mean right delta. So gamitin natin na example naman ito. Okay, tignan muna natin, nasa harapan ba siya ng ano? Ang right delta ba nasa, I mean yung point wherein we stop our tracing, or the point that is nearest to the right delta, is it in front or is it below? Okay, so as you can see, it is in front. So possible this could be an inner whirl or meeting whirl. Okay, so let's try to count. Bilangin natin, 1, 2, yung intervening ridges, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and siyam. Okay, siyam. Okay, 9 intervening ridges yung nabilang natin. Okay, 9 IR. So with that, rule dito sa rule number 1, sabi dyan, there are 3 or more intervening ridges. So pasok na pasok siya. So we can say that this is an inner whirl. Okay, inner double loop whirl, or inner type of whirl. Okay, so that is how we are going to have inner whirl. And paano naman kapag ang bilang niya is mas mababa? Okay, 2 or less intervening ridges. It doesn't matter if sa taas or sa baba, or inside or outside, okay, the ridge of the delta. So it doesn't matter sa taas or baba, or inside of the right delta, I mean inside the ridge of the right delta, or outside the ridge of delta. Okay, so kapag mas mababa siya ng 3, okay, then automatic that could be a meeting whirl. Okay, pero ito, the situation, meron siyang 9 na intervening ridges, kaya sinabi natin na it is an inner whirl. Okay, pero kapag mas mababa ng 3, okay, ibig sabihin 2 pa baba, ibig sabihin nun is meeting whirl siya. Okay, so same as here, same as to the other pattern a while ago. But ano naman yung pattern natin kanina? I mean, ano yung classification nito? Kasi sabi natin 4 intervening ridges siya pero nasa baba, okay, or outside the ridge of the right delta. So anong classification niya? So ang classification na niya is hindi inner whirl or meeting whirl kasi lagpas ng 3, but it should be called as outer whirl. Okay, so kapag outside or below the right delta, okay, then we can say that is an outer whirl. So long as it is more than 3, okay, it is more than 3. So 3 or more. Okay, so 3 or more intervening ridges. So with this situation, we can say, or within this pattern, we can say that it is an outer whorl. Okay, so ganun po yung ruling natin to say if that is an inner whorl or outer whorl. Okay, so that is for this part. Okay, and then we have here the arches family. This is the third basic pattern of fingerprint, and it is on our global population. 5% of the global population individuals possess this arch formation, okay, in their fingerprint. Okay, so there are two divisions also in here, the plain arch, and then we have here the tented arch. So let's try to have here the characteristics of a plain arch. Okay, so ang plain arch po, okay, it doesn't have the, it does not have more than 4, okay, requisites of the loop. So ano yon? It has no recurving ridge. Wala tayong recurving ridge na makikita. No angular formation, because if it has an angular formation, then it could be a tented arch. Or no upward thrust, kasi possible kapag yan ay may upward thrust, that could be a tented arch. Okay, so this is a pattern which the ridges enter on one side. Okay, so from one side of the pattern and flow towards the other side, just like a pyramid, okay, or an arch, right? So with that, with a rise in the center with no or with not more than 4 requisites of the loop. Okay, and that is simply, or this illustration is a simple or a perfect example of a plain arch. Okay, and then the second classification is the tented arch. So take note that this is a type of pattern where the majority of the ridges from an arch, okay, and one or more ridges at the center shape a tent. Okay, just like shape a tent. Okay, shape a tent in an outline giving an angle of 90 degrees or less, or one with an upward thrust. Okay, with an upward thrust having an angle of 45 degrees or more, or a pattern similar to a loop but lacking one or two of its essential elements. Kaya nasabi ko kanina, kapag hindi yan mag-fall into the elements of the loop, then that could be a tented arch. Okay, and it is also considered, or this pattern is also considered as transitional pattern, okay, between plain arch and a loop. Okay, because it has an arch formation, but it has an upward thrust, or it has a tent, then we can say, or that's the time we can say that it is a tented arch. Okay, so pag hindi siya mag-fall ng plain arch, or hindi siya mag-fall ng loop, okay, because it lacks the requisites, then that is a tented arch. So this illustration, this is a best example of a tented arch. Okay, so overall, those are the this is also another example. So overall, those are the basic patterns in fingerprint. Okay, the 3 basic patterns. Okay, and of course, don't forget their classifications. So as to summarize, okay, to summarize what we have in our video, okay, or in this video presentation, we have here the divisions of fingerprint patterns. So the loops, okay, loop pattern, it has 2 divisions, the radial loop and then the ulnar loop. So we have here the symbols, because kindly take note also of these symbols, because we are going to have this, or our next topic will be the fingerprint classification already. Okay, so kindly take note of the symbols. Okay, so for radial loop, it could be symbolized by R, or it could be symbolized by a slash also, same as to the ulnar loop, slash, but it's facing, okay, it could face different sides. Okay, so again, in radial or in loops, okay, for us to classify if that is a radial loop or ulnar loop, it should be, or we should know if that was taken in the left hand or the right hand. Okay, so for the second basic pattern, we have the whorls, and we classified it into 4: the plain whorl, central pocket loop whorl, double loop whorl, and then the accidental whorl. So take note of the symbols. W symbolizes plain whorl, C symbolizes central pocket loop whorl, and then D symbolizes double loop whorl, and accidental whorl, it is symbolized by X. Okay, and arches family, they have two classification: the plain arch and then the tented arch. So for plain arch, it's the symbol. It is symbolized by plain. I mean simple. I mean it's symbolized by letter A, and then it's symbolized by T for tented arch. Okay, so with that, those are the divisions of fingerprint pattern. And if you have a question, then you can have it on our comment section, and that would be further clarified, or that might be answered in our synchronous sessions. So thank you for watching.